The year is 2013, and somewhere deep inside the frozen wilderness of northern Canada, something extraordinary is unfolding. Two of the most elite fighting forces on the planet have been brought together, not as allies watching each other's backs, but as rivals, each determined to prove who is truly the best. On one side stand the operators of Canada's Joint Task Force 2, a secretive and fiercely capable unit whose existence most Canadians barely know about. On the other side, the warriors who had defined special operations for half a century, the United States Special Operations Command, bringing with them the swagger, the resources, and the near-mythical reputation that comes from decades at the top. What happens next challenges every assumption both sides brought with them into those frozen trees. What unfolds over following 72 hours will be talked about in quiet corners of military circles for years. And it starts with a single order. Begin. Nobody on the American side expected to be impressed. That is not arrogance. It is history. The United States military has spent decades leading the world in special operations doctrine, equipment, and funding. Their operators are trained in some of the most sophisticated programs on Earth, cycle through combat deployments at a pace few allies can match, and are backed by a defense budget that dwarfs most nations' entire economies. Canada, by contrast, fields a military that is smaller, more modestly funded, and largely unknown on the global stage. Fewer than 40,000 regular force members serve in the entire Canadian Armed Forces. Their special operations community is tiny. Joint Task Force 2, JTF-2, has never officially confirmed how many operators it fields, but informed estimates put the number in the low hundreds. So when word spread through the American ranks that they were being evaluated alongside Canadian Commandos, the reaction was something close to polite skepticism. That reaction would not survive the first day. Joint Task Force 2 was created in 1993, rising from the ashes of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police's disbanded Special Emergency Response Team. The Canadian government needed a military-grade counterterrorism and hostage rescue capability, and they needed it quickly. From the very beginning, JTF-2 was built on a philosophy of quality over quantity. Every candidate who wants to wear that unit's insignia must survive a selection process, so demanding that washout rates consistently exceed 90%. The course does not simply test fitness. It systematically dismantles candidates' mental frameworks, strips away ego, sleep, food, and warmth, and then asks each person to continue performing complex tasks under conditions that would overwhelm most professional athletes. The men and women who make it through are not the biggest or the loudest. They are the most adaptable, the most mentally resilient, and the most quietly capable human beings the Canadian military can produce. That philosophy shapes everything the unit does. JTF-2 operates under the direct authority of the Canadian government and is tasked with counterterrorism operations both domestically and abroad, hostage rescue in high-risk environments, and direct action against high-value targets. The unit deploys in small teams, often 4 to 8 operators, and places an enormous premium on precision, patience, and restraint. Unlike some Western special operations forces that have, over decades of high-tempo combat, developed a culture of aggressive speed, JTF-2 operators are taught to solve problems with the least amount of force necessary. They are trained to think, to observe, to plan for contingencies that other forces might not consider. This philosophy was shaped in large part by Canada's unique position in the world, a country that relies on special operations as a scalpel rather than a sledgehammer, a nation whose international credibility depends on measured, lawful, and precise action rather than overwhelming firepower. It is a difference in culture as much as tactics, and on the day the exercise began, that difference will become very apparent. It is worth understanding what JTF-2 had already accomplished before this exercise took place. In the weeks following the September 11 attacks, JTF-2 operators deployed to Afghanistan as part of Operation Apollo, making Canada one of the very first allied nations to put boots on the ground in that conflict. In conditions that shocked even seasoned American special operators, Canadian Commandos conducted direct action missions, reconnaissance operations, and sensitive site exploitation in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan. American commanders who worked alongside them at that time came away with a level of respect that quietly circulated within special operations communities for years afterward. One senior American officer, speaking anonymously to a Canadian journalist, described JTF-2 as operating at a level that surprised us. But institutional memory is short, and by 2013, a new generation of American operators had largely forgotten those early impressions. The exercise was, in some ways, a chance to make them remember. The Canadian Special Operations Regiment, CSOR, would also be part of the picture. Created in 2006, CSOR is a newer but equally rigorous unit designed to conduct unconventional warfare, foreign internal defense, and special reconnaissance. Think of CSOR as the Canadian equivalent of the U.S. Army Special Forces, the Green Berets, where JTF-2 is a precision scalpel for hostage rescue and direct action. CSOR is a long-game specialist, training partner forces, operating deep behind notional enemy lines, building relationships, and gathering intelligence over extended periods. Together, JTF-2 and CSOR represented the full range of Canadian special operations capability. And on the American side, they would be tested against operators from the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment, Delta, the 75th Ranger Regiment, and elements of Naval Special Warfare Command. In other words, some of the most decorated and experienced special operations warriors alive. The stage was set for something that nobody would be able to predict. The exercise, framed as a bilateral joint training event under the broader umbrella of special operations cooperation between the two nations, took place across a vast tract of boreal forest in northern Ontario, with additional urban scenarios conducted in a purpose-built military operations in urban terrain facility at Canadian Forces Base Petawawa. The scenario was deliberately complex. Both forces were given identical intelligence packages describing a notional high-value target who had to be captured alive within 72 hours. The target was being moved between safe houses in a pattern designed to test planning, tracking, surveillance, and precision action under time pressure. Critically, both forces had to operate within the same operational area simultaneously, meaning deconfliction, communication discipline, and situational awareness were as important as raw tactical skill. It was not a simple competition. It was a simulation of real-world complexity, where mistakes have consequences, and where the best operators are distinguished not by how hard they can fight, but by how intelligently they can adapt. The Americans moved quickly. Speed has long been a hallmark of U.S. special operations culture, particularly in the post-2001 era, when the relentless operational tempo in Iraq and Afghanistan had sharpened American units into instruments of extraordinary tactical efficiency. Their operators hit the ground with confidence, established a forward operating base with practiced precision, and began pushing out reconnaissance teams within hours of the exercise starting. Their communications were tight. Their movement was disciplined. Every element of the American team reflected the result of billions of dollars in training investment and years of hard combat experience. Observers watching from the evaluation team noted that the Americans looked exactly like what they were, a world-class force operating at peak effectiveness. And for the first 12 hours, the advantage seemed to belong clearly to them. They were everywhere, they were moving fast, and they were accumulating intelligence at a pace that seemed difficult to match. The Canadian Commandos did something that initially puzzled the observers. They went quiet. While the Americans were building their picture through aggressive reconnaissance sweeps, the Canadians pulled back, condensed their footprint, and sent out a single small team on a long-range observation mission that would not return for 18 hours. Their forward operating base was barely visible from 50 meters, a masterwork of concealment discipline that reflected JTF-2's deep emphasis on signature reduction. The Canadian intelligence officer in charge spent those early hours not on the ground, but bent over a map table, running probability models on the target's likely movement pattern, cross-referencing terrain features, road networks, and the subtle patterns embedded in the intelligence package that most operators would have scanned and set aside. It was patient, methodical, almost academic work, and it was building towards something the Americans did not yet see coming. The forest was quiet, but the Canadians were far from idle. The contrast in communication styles was one of the earliest things to strike the joint evaluation team. American operators communicated frequently, efficiently, and with the kind of radio confidence that comes from thousands of hours of training and real-world experience. Their brevity codes were tight, their call signs were crisp, and their situation reports came in on schedule with precision. The Canadians were on the radio far less often, but when they spoke, the information was dense, specific, and almost eerily accurate. One evaluator later described it as a difference between a sports commentator providing a running play-by-play and a chess grandmaster making a single move that suddenly makes the whole board make sense. Both approaches were effective, but the Canadian approach created a communication signature so small that the notional adversary in the exercise, a dedicated opera element, spent almost a full day trying to locate the Canadian teams before concluding that they must have simply not deployed yet. They had deployed. They were 10 meters from the tree line, watching. It happened on the second night, at approximately 2 a.m, with temperatures having dropped well below freezing and a light snow beginning to fall across the exercise area. The Canadian long-range observation team transmitted a single brief message. They had located the target's vehicle, not a probable location, not an estimated route. The actual vehicle, parked behind a farmhouse 12 kilometers north of where the American teams were concentrating their search. The intelligence officer's probability model had been right. The target had doubled back, a contingency built into the scenario specifically to test whether either force would be patient enough to track a pattern rather than chase a presence. The Americans, moving on more recent but ultimately misleading signals intelligence, had positioned their assault elements to the south. The Canadians were already moving into position before the Americans knew the target had been found. What unfolded over the next 4 hours would define the entire exercise. The Canadian assault team moved through 2 kilometers of dense forest in near total darkness, navigating by terrain association and low-light equipment, maintaining noise and light discipline so strict that the opera security element stationed at the farmhouse detected nothing until the team was 40 meters from the outer cordon. The assault itself lasted less than 3 minutes. Using a technique that combined simultaneous entry through multiple access points with a level of speed and aggression that observers later described as startling, the Canadian Commandos secured all 4 rooms of the building, isolated the simulated target, and extracted him through a pre-planned route before the Op for Quick Reaction Force, positioned just 500 meters away, had even fully assembled. When the Americans were informed that the target had been secured, their operations center went quiet for almost a full minute. Then their commanding officer asked a question that became something of a legend in the after-action review. How did they know where he was? The after-action review lasted 4 hours and was described by participants on both sides as one of the most valuable professional exchanges they had ever experienced. The American operators were not defensive. They were genuinely curious. Operator after operator from the U.S. side leaned forward to understand not just what the Canadians had done, but how they had thought about the problem. The Canadian intelligence officer walked through his probability model step by step, and the room listened in the kind of silence that serious professionals reserve for moments when they encounter something they had not considered before. The JTF-2 team leader broke down the assault, explaining the decision-making framework that had been used to identify and exploit the specific window of vulnerability in the Op for Security posture. American operators took notes. Some of them, hardened veterans who had cleared buildings in some of the most dangerous places on Earth, said afterward that they had genuinely learned something new. That is an extraordinary statement, and it is a testament to what the Canadians brought to the table. But the exchange was not one-sided. The Canadians had their own notes. What the Americans had demonstrated in their high-tempo reconnaissance operations was a level of systems integration, the seamless connection between ground teams, aerial surveillance platforms, and signals intelligence collection that the Canadian force simply could not replicate with their more limited resources. The Americans had done things in the first 12 hours of the exercise that would have taken the Canadian teams 2 or 3 times as long using their organic capabilities. The speed at which American operators could process, synthesize, and act on intelligence from multiple simultaneous collection streams was a capability that reflected decades of investment and the hard lessons of sustained combat operations. The Canadians had compensated for this with exceptional analytical skill and extraordinary individual discipline. But they were the first to acknowledge that the resource disparity was real and that in a different scenario, that disparity might have been decisive. Honest assessment is a hallmark of elite units. Both teams demonstrated it in full. Beyond the tactics and the intelligence and the assault timings, there was a human story unfolding throughout those 72 hours. The operators on both sides were people. Young men who had given years of their lives to become the best at something that most of the world would never fully understand. The American operators had come through selection programs that broke the majority of candidates who attempted them. They had deployed to combat zones, made decisions under fire that most people will never face, and carried the weight of those experiences with a quiet steadiness that characterizes truly experienced soldiers. The Canadians had walked a parallel road, different in detail, similar in cost. When these two groups of people ate together, trained together, and sat together in the cold through long watches, they recognized each other, not as rivals, as peers. The kind of mutual recognition that does not require words, that is communicated in the way a person moves, the way they handle their equipment, the way they look at a map. One story from the exercise has been recounted by multiple participants. On the final night, with the formal evaluation complete and the exercise officially concluded, a group of Canadian and American operators found themselves sharing a meal in the vehicle bay of the Petawawa training facility. Someone produced a bottle. Stories were traded, not classified operational details, but the kind of universal soldier stories that cross borders and languages and unit cultures. The time and navigation error turned a 6-hour patrol into a 14-hour ordeal. The equipment failure that happened at the worst possible moment. The new guy who everyone doubted and who then performed brilliantly under pressure. These are the stories that bind military professionals to each other in ways that no formal alliance document ever can. By the time the last of them headed to their racks, the word rival had quietly left the room. What remained was the word that actually mattered in this world: brother. The physical environment of the exercise also deserves recognition as a participant in its own right. Northern Ontario in winter is not a forgiving place. Temperatures during the exercise dropped to minus 22 degrees Celsius on the coldest night, and the combination of physical exertion, inadequate sleep, and sustained cold stress pushed everyone to their limits. Cold weather operations are, in fact, an area where Canadian forces hold a significant institutional advantage. The Canadian military has been training and operating in Arctic and subarctic conditions for generations, and their cold weather doctrine is among the most developed in any Western military. Canadian operators moved through the boreal forest with an ease that reflected deep familiarity with the environment. Several American operators, despite their exceptional overall fitness and capability, struggled with cold injuries in a way that their Canadian counterparts did not. It was one more variable in a complex equation, and it served as a reminder that excellence is always specific. Every environment has its masters. Joint Task Force 2 remains one of the most secretive special operations units in the Western world, and that secrecy has a significant effect on how Canada's military capability is perceived internationally. Unlike U.S. special operations units, which have been the subject of books, films, documentaries, and detailed investigative journalism for decades, JTF-2 maintains an almost total information blackout. Operators do not speak publicly. The Canadian government routinely declines to confirm or deny specific operational details. Even photographs of unit members are extraordinarily rare. This creates a paradox. One of the most capable special operations forces in the world is also one of the least known. International assessments of Canadian military capability frequently underestimate what JTF-2 brings to the table precisely because there is so little public information to assess. The exercise described here exists largely in the accounts of those who were present, and many of them are still serving, which means they are still silent. What is known through a combination of declassified documents, credible investigative journalism, and the account of former officials who have spoken carefully on background is that JTF-2 has operated in conflict zones across the world: Afghanistan, Iraq, the Horn of Africa, the Caribbean, and elsewhere, with a record of mission success that is, by any reasonable standard, remarkable. In 2002, a Canadian sniper attached to a JTF-2 element set what was at the time a world record for the longest confirmed kill shot in combat, a distance approximately 2,430 meters in Afghanistan. The record was later broken by another Canadian. These are not the statistics of a military force that is simply showing up. They are the statistics of a force that is operating at the absolute apex of its craft. And yet, because Canada maintains its silence, and because the world has grown accustomed to measuring military power in the currency of budget size and deployment numbers, JTF-2's true capability remains largely hidden from the public conversation. The United States, for its part, has long known what Canada brings to the table, even when the wider public does not. The level of intelligence sharing, operational cooperation, and mutual trust between Canadian and American Special Operations Forces is, by all credible accounts, exceptionally deep. The two nations are founding members of the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, and their special operations communities have been working alongside each other in genuinely dangerous places for decades. American Special Operations commanders have, in various forums and through various intermediaries, consistently rated Canadian forces among their most valued partners, not in the diplomatic language of alliance management, but in the operational language of people who have trusted their lives to those standing beside them. That is the most honest assessment there is. When lives are the stakes, professional courtesy disappears. What remains is a truth. There's a broader lesson in this story that extends beyond military affairs. It is a lesson about how we measure excellence and about the danger of confusing scale with quality. In almost every domain of human endeavor, the largest and best resource participant tends to attract the most attention, and that attention creates a self-reinforcing narrative in which size becomes synonymous with superiority. The United States military is, by virtually every quantitative measure, the most powerful in the world. Its budget, its technology, its global reach, and its operation experience are genuinely unmatched. But excellence in the field, the thing that actually determines outcomes in close, cold, difficult moments when plans fail and human beings have to solve problems with whatever they have in front of them, is not a function of budget. It is a function of selection, training, culture, and character. And in those domains, small can be every bit as powerful as large, sometimes more so. The Canadian approach to special operations reflects something that is, in a sense, deeply Canadian, a preference for substance over performance, for quiet competence over loud confidence, for doing the thing well rather than being seen to do it. This is a cultural trait that has occasionally frustrated Canada's allies. There are moments in alliance politics when visibility matters as much as capability, but in the operational world, it produces warriors of extraordinary quality. The operators of JDF-2 and CSWR do not serve for recognition. They serve because the work itself demands the best version of who they can be, and because the standards of their units permit nothing less. The exercise in that northern Ontario forest was, for the Canadians, just another test, the kind of test they had been passing quietly and without fanfare for years. The outcome was not a surprise to them. It was, perhaps, only a surprise to those who had not been paying attention. In the months following the exercise, the formal evaluation report, classified at the time and never fully released, was shared with senior leadership on both sides. Those who have seen it describe its conclusions in terms that are diplomatically careful but operationally clear. Both forces demonstrated exceptional capability. Both identified specific areas for improvement, and both would benefit from continued joint training at the highest operational level. The recommendation for expanded bilateral special operations training was approved. Over the following decade, Canadian and American special operators would continue to train together, share doctrine, and deploy alongside each other in multiple operational theaters. The exercise had not produced a winner and a loser in any simple sense. It had produced something more valuable, a deeper, more honest understanding between two elite communities of what each was genuinely capable of and what each could learn from the other. For the Canadian military community, the exercise became one of those stories that circulates through the ranks without ever appearing in a newspaper, a point of quiet professional pride in a culture that does not celebrate itself loudly. Junior soldiers who heard fragments of the story from senior non-commissioned officers during training would carry it with them as an example of what Canadian forces could accomplish when given the opportunity to compete at the highest level for recruiting purposes. Though the Canadian forces are careful about how they use such stories, it reinforced a message that choosing the Canadian military did not mean choosing a lesser path. It meant choosing a different path, one that demanded just as much, rewarded excellence just as fully, and produced warriors who could stand on any stage in the world and hold their own. So what was the outcome that no one saw coming? It was not a points total on a scorecard, though if one had been kept, the margin would have surprised most observers. It was not a humiliation for the Americans, who demonstrated the world-class capability that their reputation demands. The outcome was something quieter and more lasting than a score. It was a moment in that vehicle bay at Petawawa, when two groups of people who had been trained to compete found themselves simply talking. As soldiers, as professionals, as human beings who had been to the edge of what is possible and come back changed by it. The outcome was mutual respect at the deepest professional level. The outcome was a realization on the American side that they had genuinely underestimated what was standing across from them in those frozen trees. And the realization on the Canadian side that the world's most powerful military machine still had things to teach and was generous enough to share them. That is a rare thing, and it is worth far more than any trophy. Here is a question worth sitting with. Most people who follow military affairs have a strong instinct about which nation produces the best special operations forces in the world. That instinct is usually shaped by what they have seen in films, read in books, or heard from the loudest voices in the room. But the loudest voice and the most capable force are not always the same thing. Quiet excellence exists everywhere, in the boreal forests of Canada, in the mountains of Norway, in the deserts of Australia, in places you might not expect it. The story of what happened in Northern Ontario is one small piece of a much larger truth. The world's elite military forces are more equal, more interconnected, and more mutually dependent than any one nation's mythology suggests. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Which special operations force do you think is the most underestimated in the world, and why? The conversation in the comments is always the best part of what we do here. And if stories like this one matter to you, stories that go past the headlines and into the real human experience of military excellence, then make sure you are subscribed, because there are many more of them waiting to be told.